Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a little bit bittersweet. I've come to a decision I've made about my antique booth and I wanted to talk a little bit about it, what the future of my business is. And I want to share with you 3 mistakes that I made with my antique booth that I want to share with you to avoid in your business. It doesn't necessarily have to be a business about vintage and antiques. I really think that these 3 mistakes that I made could be applied to any type of business. So if you're interested in this video, learning from my mistake, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe. I hope you watch this video all the way through. There are timestamps down below if you want to jump in ahead at any point of the story. It's all outlined down below. I do new videos every Wednesday about reselling. I'm a part-time reseller. I sell vintage and modern brands online and at my antique booth. I want to thank you guys so much for clicking on this video, hopefully watching it all the way through. And if you're interested in hearing this story, stay tuned. So to start off with a little background about my history with my antique booth, I've had my antique booth for 5 years. I've been with Pomona Antique Mart, space 512. I'm on the top floor. I found the space browsing through Instagram and I just jumped on it. At that point, I was selling on Etsy and I was kind of getting like burnt out from selling online. I wanted to kind of try out retail, but I obviously was not in the place to open a boutique. So I considered opening an antique booth. It could be a small little space that I could decorate on my own any way I wanted. I could tag my items, price my items. Somebody would be able to sell them for me and I would just collect my earnings at the end of the month. I thought it was such a great idea, and it was a great idea, and for a while it really did work out. But I want to say that even pre-pandemic, things were already kind of going downhill. I want to say that there are a lot of different factors that played into it and it kind of snowballed over time. And I've been going back and forth with this decision for years. And I just finally decided now is the time to cut the cord and close part of my booth. I'm not closing all of it. So I started with a 10 by 10 space. Most antique booths are 10 by 10 spaces. What I really liked about my booth was that it had 3 built-in racks for clothing, and I jumped into this business doing clothing, like exclusively clothing, shoes, purses, and accessories. Over the years, I did grow my space. My booth is directly across from a wall space unit, and the wall space includes built-in shelving and it has 1 other clothing rack. So when I expanded, I went from 3 clothing racks to 4, and then I also brought in my mobile rack that I use for pop-up shops. So I had 5 racks total of clothing. I added my own shelving unit within the space, so I had 2 shelving units to completely fill up. So at that point, I was at the peak and I was able to, fulfill inventory and gather a lot of stuff to fill in my unit. By the 3rd year, however, things were starting to decline and the environment where my antique booth business is located started to change a lot. It used to be a really busy street. It had multiple antique booths. And I'm going to give you a tour of the street and you're going to see how much it has changed. I don't have before footage. I just have the after footage, and this was pre-pandemic. It wasn't because of the pandemic. Pre-COVID, a lot of business were already closing down. Like half of the antique malls shut down, and now there are only 3 remaining antique malls, and the hours are limited. So this contributed to me starting to question my business at the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020. February 2020 was bad. I was in the negative. And then at that point, I was deciding whether to close or not. Then March came and COVID hit and everything shut down. The antique booths shut down for about 6 months. I want to say it opened back up in September. So for those 6 months, it was closed. We had no sales, obviously, but they didn't charge us any rent. They forgave rent because one of those loans for small businesses, so they were able to not charges rent. So when things started back up in September 2020, things were slow, of course. People were still not shopping. There were a lot of restrictions, and again, it was just really volatile. It was like negative month after negative month. Things did get a little better, I think, in December, but even then COVID got really bad again. And I think I had one good month at the beginning of the year, and it's just been up and down, like breaking even, negative, little green, negative, breaking even. It's just been a roller coaster ride. So I've come to the decision to downsize my booth. I am getting rid of my 10 by 10 space, the space that I started with, which is like my pink booth with my lettering. And it's bittersweet, but what can I do? I can't keep bleeding red over there. But I do acknowledge that I made 3 crucial mistakes that I think just added to this decision that I made that contributed to just like the negative decline of the sales at my booth. I'm keeping the wall unit space for now. So the space that's directly across from me, it has the built-in shelving unit and it has 1 rack, and I really feel like this space is gonna allow me to get creative again and really curate the look that I want for my booth and just bring in higher quality items. So this is a space I've decided to keep, which is the built-in rack and the wall unit, just the wall space. And this is my booth that I will be closing at the end of July. So now I'm going to go into the 3 mistakes that I made that I will learn from. Mistake number 1 would be quality control. I think that the quality of my items really declined over the years, especially the 3rd year. When it comes to vintage and antiques, you're constantly having to source, and sometimes you're going to find great stuff, and sometimes you're going to go through drought periods when you're not going to be able to find the great stuff. So what are you going to do during those peaks and during those valleys? My antique mall is pretty lenient, so they also allow for like newer items. When I upgraded my business, I kind of like tripled my space. I didn't like when racks were empty, when shelves were empty, so I would always fill up the booth, and sometimes the quality of my items just went down. It wasn't a lot of 60s and mid-century items at sometimes it was more 80s items, more 90s items. So I think definitely to keep better quality control of your items, and things are going to fluctuate. You're not always going to have like the top of vintage items available to you, but just stay as consistent as possible. Mistake number 2 was not pivoting into larger ticket items. I think you can have a successful antique booth with just clothing and accessories and jewelry, but I think you do need bigger ticket items at the end of the month to really boost your sales. So big ticket items are furniture pieces, and I really regret not being able to jump into furniture pieces, but I just don't have the means. Like, I don't have a truck. Like, I run a solo business. I do everything by myself. That's why I mainly focus on clothing and fashion and accessories, because that's stuff that I can source on my own. When it comes to furniture, you really need another person, a couple of people to help you carry all of the furniture. I'm on the 3rd floor. That means going up flights of stairs and going up freight elevators. I drive a Corolla. I don't have a pickup truck. Like, how am I going to transport these pieces? Like, I did sell one little vanity, and that was like a really good month. I've sold like record stands, chairs, things like that. But like big furniture pieces like dining sets, bedroom sets, vanities makers, but I just didn't have the means to transport that. So not being to expand into bigger pieces, I feel like really negatively affected my business as well. The 3rd mistake that I made was definitely not trusting my gut. Like, I knew before COVID, I knew at the end of 2019 that things were declining and that it was time for me to make a choice, and I just kept putting it off and kept putting it off. I was like, no, maybe it'll get better, but it was just really inconsistent. There was no way of determining whether things were gonna get better when things, other businesses on our street kept closing down, restaurants were closing down, so the traffic on our street just declined. And then on top of that, my antique mall changed their hours. They limited their hours. They went from being open 7 days a week from 9 to 6 to only being open Wednesdays to Sundays, and you know, they would close at 4. So when they changed their hours, that was definitely a red flag. And you know, I kept putting it off, and I was like, let me see if it's gonna work. But I think that you really need to trust your gut and, you know, trust your instincts. When you know, and really stop making excuses. So for a long time I made excuses, then COVID happened and shut everything down, and then even when September of 2020 things opened up again, it was still very back and forth. I was just like waiting for things to get better, and they never did. So those were 3 mistakes that I made that you could apply to life in general. I'm still gonna stay with my wall unit, and again, I said my wall unit, it's really gonna allow me be more selective with the items that I'm picking up and really curate my space. I'm still going to be at Pomona Antique Mart. I'm not letting go of my business. Maybe one day I'll be able to grow it back into a 10 by 10 booth again. Or maybe I can open up another location. Who knows? But I'm not giving up. I'm just downsizing. I'm going into a smaller space. And it's going to be directly across from the booth that I was in. So yeah, I just wanted to share that news and those mistakes that I made. I hope you learned something from this. Next week is a video all about my storage unit, and I'm going to give you a tour of this space and what I use it for and how it helps me in my business. So if you're interested in that, I would really appreciate you to hit subscribe, and I'll see you here next Wednesday. I do videos every Wednesday. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Bye. This is Antique Row, located in the Arts District of Pomona, California. And as you can see, shops are boarded up now. A lot of things have changed in the past 3 years. This was a really cool like punk rock t-shirt record shop that's now closed. And the remaining businesses have very limited hours, and they are just very inconsistent. So traffic has gone down a lot. The restaurants have like revolving hours as well. Sometimes they open, sometimes they close. And it's just sad to see how traffic has declined.